Shalom and good day all, this is Tehillim29 back again for another indie comic review. And for this indie comic review I will be reviewing both issues of Rogue Sun, so the first two issues of Rogue Sun on the channel. And as you can see here, this is issue 1 by Mr. Parrott, or Ryan Parrott, who has also worked on some of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, I believe, and issue 2. So we've got the main character here, as we also see him seated in the center here. We will learn more about that character and what has happened. So now it's time to jump to reviewing the first issue. So first things first, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that's happening inside in regards to the story? Sure enough it does, and I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. I'll now move into showing some of the internal art, which we'll get to see some of the things that are happening inside of the story. So I'll now move to showing the beginning, middle and of course the end, and the rating for the internal art. So jumping into some of the art around the beginning of the story, we have the character of Rogue Sun, and we finally link to the main character, who is actually presently running the Rogue Sun sort of like superhero gear. And this is how things began. So we get a bit of a we get a bit of an intro in regards to his character, and his name is called Dylan Bell. And as you can see, he's almost like a bit of a delinquent, but looking for others to basically provide the answers for him instead of learning them for himself. As we jump towards the middle of the story, we start to get an indication of some of the things that have happened, that his old man has passed away, and of course something has been handed down to him. And of course you can see that there's the brother and the sister there, as well as his mother, and of course some of the things that also get sold off. And of course, we get our first appearance of one of our villains that Dylan must encounter. And last but not least, towards the end of the story, I will actually show the last page, and we finally get like an image of Dylan's old man. But the thing is, what you learn in the story is that Dylan's old man is now dead. And how can he now be seen by his son? We'll soon find out in the next issue. For the internal art, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. I actually quite enjoyed the art. Moving to the story. Now, as you know, there are certain things that I personally enjoy in my stories. Seeing that this is a first issue, it does not require references. So in this we have the time period of 1 week later that takes place in this story. The location to which this takes place, we get Crescent City, so we get that. We also get the Crescent City High School, to which Dylan attends, the Bella State, to which he lives. Moving into the cast of characters, we have the Rogue Sun, so basically that's his superhero equipment, and you actually learn that it's connected to somewhat a gem of sorts, or a jewel of sorts, and it's called the Sun Jewel. And of course the person who now takes over the role of Rogue Sun is Dylan Bell. We end up encountering the person called Abernathy, we end up meeting Mr. Bow's wife, who is called Juliet. The villain that makes his appearance, Marcus Bow, who is the husband of Juliet, and Suave, who is the first villain that Dylan encounters. For this, I actually gave the story a 7 out of 10, not a 7.5, but I'm happy with the 7. It's now time to move into the next issue, which is issue 2. Now, as we jump into issue 2, one good thing about this actual cover is that we slowly learn a little bit more about the family to which Dylan Bow is a part of, as well as some of the things that are happening in the Crescent City. So, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that's happening inside the story? Sure enough it does, to which I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. I'll now move into showing some of the internal art in relation to the story, as well as covering some of the things that you get to see inside of the story. So, jumping to some of the art around the beginning of the story, and we learn that Dylan Bow has gone up against another villain, who we learn is Billy Bloodmoon. And of course this takes place around a cemetery, and of course a little bit outside of it, until he finally returns home, and we get a bit of a conversation between him and his old man, and we start to learn now that the way the Sun Jewel works, it sort of leaves a bit of an imprint of the previous user, to help the new user learn how to use it. So I think that's quite clever with this. So I'll now jump towards the middle. And as we jump towards the middle of the story, we get to see some discussion between the family members. And of course, we've got the characters Ori there, who's his younger sister, followed by Brock. But we don't learn the younger brother's name until later on. But you definitely get to see like his attitude towards his brother, because he got the thing which he really wanted from his old man. And of course he starts to move on his journey again, only for the Sun Jewel to activate once again, and it's time for him to be a hero. So it activates when things are happening and things are in trouble, and slowly jumping towards the end of the story. Actually, I really liked what happened around this part of the story, because before Billy Bloodmoon is defeated, on the previous page, when he's talking to his son, when Marcus is talking to his son, he tells him to throw a hard punch towards his face. And it's like, for real? But not realizing that Billy Bloodmoon, that villain that he's up against, is sort of like right where his father is. And I really like how that was sort of set up strategically in the story, and how the father helped with that. Yes, he might be deceased, but he's actually helped giving his son some good advice whilst becoming the new superhero. Now, I need to move to the epilogue of this, and this is something that carries over towards the end of the story, and we start to see some things connected to something that Dylan Bow has been asked to investigate, and that is how his father was murdered. And this links to one of the shady figures who is somewhat responsible for the murder of Marcus Bell. So for the internal art, I gave this a 7.5 out of 10. Moving into the story, seeing that in this story we got no indication of time. No indication of time, let alone references. But being the second issue, I'm going to let it get away with references. And not only that, it's also an indie. So once it maybe gets a little bit further, I might consider it. Moving into the locations that we got to encounter. Again, it wouldn't hurt to make these locations a little bit more clear in the story. It was able to be done in the first issue. It should have been consistent in moving over into the second issue. But this is what I managed to work out with what was shown. We got the Bell Estate, we got the high school, and of course we got last place towards the end, which is somewhere unknown in Crescent City. That's even if it is in Crescent City, it might actually be outside of it, but it's not very clear in that. The cast of characters consisting of the Rogue Son, who is presently Dylan Bell. We also had Billy Bloodmoon. We also had Juliet Bell, Reggie, someone to which Dylan Bell goes to speak to actually help him this time around to sort of like learn some answers. And I thought that was a bit of an improvement compared to the first issue. And then we end up learning of his sister and brother's name being Ori and Brock, to which I gave this story a 7 out of 10. Well, until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day.